The July 5th, 2022 meeting of the West Haven ARPA Committee will now come to order. Will each member, paid professional, and city official state your name for the record? Ken Carney.
Doug Coulter.
David Grudberg from Carmody Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy.
Jack Regan, Managing Director, UHY.
Dwight Knowles.
Gary Perda.
Ken Ferris.
Iris Diaz.
Rohan Smith.
Chris Borstein.
And Pete, you want to say something? Pete, let the record show Pete Massaro's here. Keegan.
Egan French, UHY.
Okay, each member has received a copy of tonight's agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? If none, the agenda stands. Before we go on to minutes, let me just talk about a little housekeeping matter. So, last month, we did not have the benefit of the video, and the result was it was very difficult to do the minutes. And what we found when you listen to the tape is there's a lot of people talking while other people are speaking, and that's why you have a packet with a separate packet of minutes. Dwight spent several additional hours trying to do the minutes correctly. So I'd like to, moving forward, I'd like to have everyone speak to the chair and one person speak at a time. If I don't follow that rule, just raise your hand and I'll stop because it'll all make a mistake. But we need one person talking at a time, okay? With that, I'm gonna ask the clerk to read the minutes from the May 10th, 2022 regular meeting.
Call to order at 5:48 p.m. by Ken Carney. Absent, Mike Glass, Neil. In attendance, David, Doug, Ernie. Approval of agenda of June 7th. No proposed changes to the agenda. Approval of meeting minutes for May 3rd. Approved. Chairman's report. Accounting, RFP, UHY advisors, tax and business consultants has been approved to represent the city of West Haven. Estimated fees for corrective action plan development and implementation of $144.5. Motion to approve, Dwight. Second, Gary. Discussion? No discussion. Discussion. Committee member Rohan Smith asked, in the proposal, the fees are based on fully loaded hourly rate by labor category. How will they make an assessment of the labor charge and what will it be? Chairman Carney, the committee will be approving their invoices and we will be directing the amount of work to be done. If we feel that they are charging too much, we can put the brakes on. Approved unanimously. Architectural design firm. Committee has approved 4 companies. These companies have provided a list of charges. Motion to approve, Gary Pedot. Second, Ken Farris. No discussion. Review of council resolutions, May 31st for the food bank. Draft of the application form distributed to the committee for approval. Approved by Chris Bernstein. Second, Ken. No discussion. Approved by unanimously. Child pedestrian safety. The city council has approved the expenditures of $409.5 for sidewalk repair for all the schools and all areas leading up to the schools. The city council approved the project unanimously. Motion to approve, Ken Ferris. Second, Dwight. No discussion. Approved unanimously. Stormwater management, $530,000 for vacuum truck. Price increase. City council approved. Parks and open spaces up to $10,000 is approved to match the 2021 DEP Urban Forest Equity Grant. The tree warden shall submit bills for materials and labor. Reuse center. Description of proposed reuse and cycling center. Motion to approve Antonazzi Associates as architects. By Dwight Knowles. Second, Gary. No discussion. Approved unanimously. Johnson Senior Center refurbishment and Child Development Center refurbishment. Motion to approve Orion Migani as the architects. Ken Ferris. Second. No discussion. Approved unanimously. Direct cash to aid small businesses. Discuss. Public health outreach. Discuss. Ernie. Sidewalk installations, see number 3.3.2.A-2. Invoice approval. Dunn Environmental, number 2231 for 5.7. Approved. Dwight. second Gary. Done environmental inspection, 2228 for 1.3, Ken Farris, and second by Iris. No discussion, approved. No new business. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we've got a couple things we have to change here. Before I go, does anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Proposed changes. All right, let's start on the first page. Let's go to 3.1.1. There are two buckets of money proposed by, of fees proposed by UHY. The 144.5 is the bucket of internal, the strengthening of internal policies that the city will use that bucket of money to achieve that. Our fee is actually 210,000. So we want to change the 144 to 210. And what I would do, Dwight, is I'd leave the 144,500, I would cross it off, and then put the 210 right next to it.
Will do. Okay.
That takes care of the first page. Let's go to page 2. Johnson Community Center, right?
Yes.
And Doug, what are you saying?
No problem with the Johnson Community Center.
Okay?
The-
Go ahead.
The reuse center, I think there might have been some cross signals between me and the purchasing director in this motion. So that has gone out to bid for an engineering firm, whereas I think you were thinking of having it as a subcontractor of Antonazzi.
Yes.
I think that the administration thought that that was a very specific skill, and they wanted to get a broad range of proposals from people with that specific skill.
All right, so unbeknownst to me, instead of choosing from our 4 architectural firms, that actually went out to bid. I wasn't aware of that. So the motion still stands because it was approved, but we can bring that up tonight and we can change that.
You
Under
may
new
need,
business? Under new business?
I think you can let it stand, because you may need an architect at some point.
Yeah, I think we let it lie for now.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't send him an award letter or anything. We'll just wait and see when we need
It's,
somebody.
the only change would be, instead of having Antonazzi hire the civil engineer.
Right.
We would hire the civil engineer.
That makes sense.
So
Okay.
I think that's the only
Right,
change.
was not aware of that, so thank you. Okay, are there any other proposed changes to the minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes with the proposed changes?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I'm gonna ask the clerk to make the proposed changes that were just approved and submit them to the city clerk. Excellent. Moving on to Chairman's report, I'd like to introduce Jack Reagan, Managing Director of UHY. Jack comes to us from Virginia today, drove up here for this meeting. Jack, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
As I've said before, this is a three-legged stool. We've got the committee, we've got the attorney, and now we have the accounting firm. My thought on the role of UHY is a couple things. There is a lot of reporting that has to take place. Doug has submitted a list of things that he knows of, and we think there's even more. We would like your firm to assist or take over that whole reporting segment.
Yep.
We are very concerned about a website, and the initial promise to the administration and the community is that they could go on the city website and they can see the total and what's been spent to date, and that is proving difficult on the city website. We would prefer a link on the city website that goes to a website that you could actually populate.
Okay.
We can assist with the numbers, and I'd like to sit with somebody to create that, but basically what we're thinking is it would be a checkbook style page, and then each of the 20 jobs, if you will, would have a bar graph showing how much of it's been completed to date.
Yep.
And the beginning of those bar graphs would actually show if an RFQ is needed or an RFP is needed, and then we would color those in as completed. And then as we pay down on the job, the bar graph would begin to fill itself in until completion. And the third part of that is, there's been some language written up for each project, and there'll be much more from what we talked about earlier today, to meet the compliance part of it. I'd like a viewer to be able to click on the job and up pops a page and a half description of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So it's not a very complicated website, but that's what I think would work the best. Does anybody else have any other suggestions for the website? We can spend more time on it, but those are the initial thoughts. Anybody?
I think you could post the minutes there in the agenda.
Yeah, of course, yep. Okay, so minutes and agenda, excellent.
And, you know, at the end of this, as well as Doug well knows, you know, at the end of this month, your latest quarterly report is due to Treasury. And I'm seeing a lot of governments take that PDF that you get at the end of that process when you hit submit and posting of that to the website as well as, okay, here's the final report that went to Treasury. So that's something as well that I would anticipate going there. And certainly the drill down around the individual project life cycle, you know, from RFP all the way through award, and then the individual project description, and then the financial drill down itself can all be click, and it opens, you know, a different layer. We've got some capability using one of the Microsoft business analysis products to be able to track all of that by individual product. That will pretty easily link up to the website that gets created.
So I think that's a priority. The sooner we get that, the better.
Yep.
And then are you gonna assist in the reporting for the 31st?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good, all right. We also thought that you would provide someone here 3 days a week, maybe it's Keegan.
It's definitely gonna be
All
Keegan.
right. Welcome to your new home. Do you have any experience with Munis at all?
I do.
Okay. So one of the challenges I think we're having, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, is creating account numbers for each of these different projects.
Right, so the challenge is that we're midstream astride of some senior staff changes. And that's usually done at a senior staff level. So we would have to introduce you to the finance director, have him set you up with permission so you could create the accounts necessary, so we don't have to keep 2 books. If we can just do this on Munis, it'll be much more efficient than us having to track it all and then upload to Munis.
And Munis is a teaming partner with UHY in terms of, I've got access to their resources to be able to help. If there's additional functionality that we need help just getting trained on to be able to use over and above what we already bring to the table, they'll be able to provide that to us. So I'm not worried about being able to get the functionality ironed out.
It's good to hear. I'd also like to talk about your team with David going through each of the tasks and giving us a clear answer that this is approved for ARPA funds, and that may require that you shuffle some of the projects into the different categories. You've got the $10 million category, which has
Yep.
less reporting, and then you've got the category that requires a lot of reporting. You might have to shuffle some of those jobs to make that work. We'd really like that sooner than later.
Yep.
What I don't want to do is spend resources on what we think is an approved project
Right.
and then find out it's not, because we're so limited here in resources.
Yep.
We'd like to, focus everything properly.
So the sort of the process on that one is working off of the, I think the document that's on page 4, is from what I understand, the various projects that are under consideration. And then there's other documentation, I'm sure, that exists, that the city's created around those projects, and pulling that, all those disparate pieces of information together into one document that will actually feed very nicely into the documentation that's ultimately going to go on the website. Just sort of a 1 to 2 pager. Here's the project. The next decision, once you approve the project, is, or concurrent with the approval of the project, is, are you paying it out of the revenue loss bucket, which has fewer administrative requirements, or are you paying it out of the, the ARPA bucket, which we'll call that broadly. And, the overall philosophy for that should be to spend your more restricted funds first, which will be out of the ARPA bucket, so that you can give yourself the most flexibility in being able to use the money coming out of the revenue loss bucket. So collectively, we'll work with the committee to make that recommendation for approval, and then that will drive, like you said, the level of administration that has to be done on a project-by-project basis. Once it's determined that a project has to get paid out of the ARPA bucket, what we then do is assign what's called a federal expenditure category to it, which is how you have to report all those things up to Treasury that I just alluded to, which is due at the end of every quarter. And that, so that will help drive some of the administrative requirements, some of the contractual requirements will also be driven through that, because the successful project owner, applicant, whatever you want to say there, has certain information that they may need to furnish to the city, so the city can furnish it to Treasury. And the best way to do that and guarantee that information, get it into that contract right off the top.
I would suggest perhaps a meeting in the near future. David, Doug, myself, anybody else that wants to attend, and we start hammering down this list one at a time.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right. And the final thing to talk about tonight is last time I was at the council, there was some question on 3 items that the council wanted to spend money on. One was the EMS premium hazard pay, one was the Arts Center, and I think the police
Police retention.
retention payments were in there.
Right.
Can you tell us for the record, are those 3 items acceptable to be paid under ARPA funds?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, those, any sort of premium or hazard pay for fire and EMS, first responders, police as well, obviously, are allowable. And then, an arts center construction is absolutely a community, it's for the betterment of the community. There's a federal expenditure category that fits in. For the fire and EMS pay, what we would need to do, and for police pay, if there's hazardous duty pay in there as well, is just we would need to go through and look at each individual who is going to be eligible to receive that pay, to talk or to document what their gross pay is, because there's a comparison that has to be done to a area average salary times 150%. And if the amount of pay plus this hazardous duty pay falls above that 150% threshold, there's just additional documentation that needs to be maintained by the city, approved by council, that says, yes, we are willing to use our ARPA funds to make that payment. So if something exceeds that 150% cap, it doesn't mean that it's not ARPA allowable. It means there's an extra layer of documentation that needs to be provided by the city for those matters. The only thing I would add to that is that this should, because ARPA is not a sustainable funding source, if you bake that into any of the base salaries, you're going to be struggling 2-3 years from now to replace those fundings as part of the base salary. So all of this should be considered a stipend or a one-time bonus, the way that you do that, so that you're not playing with that base pay, because 2 or 3 years down the road, you need to be worrying about the base pay from the funding standpoint. So you want to make sure that you've got some sustainable methods for doing it.
I'm gonna bring the chairman of the council in. Go ahead, Pete.
As far as the police, as far as the fire, it's gonna be a stipend. Okay, stipend with, the amount of what I got is 96 firefighters that were during the COVID crisis.
Yep.
As far as the PD, they are getting in their base pay, which has already been approved, by another attorney that the city hired, and also by the MAR, that the mayor had to do a 5-year plan that will sustain the future of the base pay and everything, so that's
Okay.
already done.
Yeah, and there's nothing, again, it's not, it is allowable to put it into the base pay, there's nothing saying that you can't. I was just counseling, from a sustainability standpoint, if you do that, as long as you've got a plan for how you're gonna refill that bucket with a sustainable funding source at the back end, that's good. But yeah, I don't want to be misconstrued as to say that's not allowable under ARPA, to put it in base pay. It's allowable, it's not recommended unless you identify a sustainable funding source at the end, which is what the city's done, so that should work and it all holds together nicely.
So, Mr. Chairman, do you think we should get a quick letter from Jack telling the council these 3 items are in fact?
Yeah, you sent a letter. We already got the attorney's approval from Milford about that money for the cops.
I'm talking about the 3 items that you were asked about in public session. The cops, the firemen, and the art center. Do you want something in writing, or is this good enough?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if you could prepare a letter, 1-pager, simple letter, just saying, address it to the ARPA committee if you would, and then I'll bring it to the council.
And I'll work with Jack on that.
Oh,
I'll
wonderful.
consult with him on that.
Thank you, sir.
We can talk offline about any questions.
Does anybody
My
have?
soon-to-be new best friend.
Likewise.
That's an expensive relationship. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Jack from UHY? Anybody? Okay. All right, Jack, thank you. I'm going to
Thank
move
you.
on to item B, food bank, 2.1. So we actually approved an application that we advertised in the West Haven City Voice, and that was a donation, by the way. The West Haven Voice did not charge for it, but we put the application in the Voice, and we got 3 organizations to respond. So here's my thought on this. I would like 2 people from this committee, Chris being one of them who has extensive experience in the food world, to take these applications, go to the locations, and do a quick investigation and see what's going on. I'm sure they're all legit. I know they're all legit. I just don't have the insight, nor does the committee, to know exactly what their needs are and what their physical plants are like and what they're looking for exactly. I think if 2 members went out and took the applications and did a little research, you could report back to the committee, and then we'd have a better chance of understanding how to break this money up.
Just a question
Sure.
that I think I mentioned in the last meeting.
I don't profess to be the most informed person on these matters in the city. Having said that, to my knowledge, Wheat is probably the most prolific food pantry or bank in the town. And I was really surprised to see that they didn't fill out an application.
I spoke to her.
They didn't want any money?
I had a conversation, because that was the first one I called, when I did not see her application.
Mhm.
And Rose told me that they have all the food they need coming from the food bank. They don't need any physical plant improvements, but they do need a new parking lot. Can they have money for a new parking lot? So if you want to go see her too and take a look, that'd be helpful. I
No,
think
just-
we need to extend the deadline for this application.
Like as I read it, I see, and everyone knows Phil Lisco, and he's a great guy in his organization, but they basically do specific events for this. And, in reading, I'd be interested to hear what the accounting firm would say about the Living Word Ministries, because it doesn't look like they really delineate between the ministry and this, I forget what they call it, Dream Center of West Haven. So would the money be going actually to the ministry? And, I seem to recall something about federal funds going to religious organizations. and specifically in their mission of we accomplish this by reconnecting them to God, which is actually in violation of federal law if they're politicizing, as they're giving away food. So that's something to be investigated first. And then I'd say the next thing is, according to their budget, they're delivering $30,000 of food with a $300,000 overhead cost for storage, packaging, supplies. I'm happy to go there and
Yeah, you take a look.
and make friends in person.
Yeah, you need to go. There's several things about these applications that don't make a lot of sense.
No.
Two people from the committee have to go. So anybody else want to go with Chris? Help him out.
No, huh?
Someone's got to go. Who wants to do it?
Come on. I promise not to get into any fights here.
I'm trying to think of availability, when, and what days. I could do it on a Monday.
Ken can go. Or all three of us can go if you want.
I could do it on a Monday, but outside of a Monday, I'm pretty,
It could be a weekend too. It could be a Saturday visit.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They work on
Saturday visit?
Sundays.
Yeah, we can send it.
All right. So you got Rohan's number and Ken's number. Just call them and
Yeah.
work it out. We'd like to get you to all three locations, and while you're at it, go to Wheat. See what they're doing.
Chris, if you could work through me to make those appointments, I'll contact the applicants and let them know.
Okay.
And I'll let them know to expect a call from you.
I'll send an email string around tomorrow to get the ball rolling. We'll see where we go.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One of the things that we found particularly successful at other localities for whom we are providing assistance is to have what I'll call an orientation meeting or an overview meeting with any of these applicants to make it very clear what the record-keeping requirements are for them to be able to use these funds. Because the city ultimately has a responsibility to monitor how those funds are being used by the applicants. And, I've not seen obviously the application or the budget that was submitted by the Living Word Ministries, but part of what they would need to do is to demonstrate how the money that you've given them has been spent for the program that you're giving them money on. That means they've got to maintain certain records, whether it's a payroll record that shows that such and such a person was doing the community outreach and doing all those things that are endemic or inherent in food bank operations. But we generally hold an overall orientation for everybody. We record it so that it can be played back by folks who couldn't attend in person. And then once the projects are approved, we hold individual orientation meetings as well, so that any question that they may have had but didn't ask coming out of that overall one, they get a chance to speak now or forever hold their peace. And we know that they have been told specifically what they need to do to maintain compliance so that they can't come back at a later point and say, well, we didn't know that. Well, yeah, because we told you here in an overall meeting, we told you here in an individual meeting. So that helps,
Yeah.
set the tone. And I would strongly consider, if you're going to do a second round of applications at some point, that we hold that sort of outreach meeting before the applications go out, because some people will self-select themselves out. Because some people just want this as free money and do not believe that they've got any strings attached to it. And once they hear their strings attached, some people may not actually want the money after all, for some strange reason. But, just something else to consider. It's something we've found very successful when implemented at other localities.
All right, so that tells us you're gonna go to the site, you're gonna look at these 4 organizations. We're not gonna make any decisions. We're gonna give them a chance to redo their application based on your findings and the rules that Jack says they have to follow, and we'll take it from there.
Yep.
So one thing that, 2 points I just want to contribute some information on. One is that during the pandemic, the Vertical Church group stood up when a lot of other people weren't able to. tractor trailer loads of food with hundreds of volunteers were in action in their parking lot. What they want to do is continue that past the pandemic. And they've been working to create an ecumenical center that's a coalition of religious organizations, faith-based organizations, I should say. And they've rented the old Masonic Temple, part of the Masonic Temple over on Center Street, to create that walk-in center. And they have been very successful at getting food out to people when they most needed it. So I think that the administration has a lot of respect for what they were able to accomplish when we couldn't. We just didn't have the manpower to do it. So we ended up being their support team instead of their being our support team. So kudos to them, and I'm glad that the city will have an opportunity to give them a permanent home, and they'll be able to network with the other church groups and faith-based organizations to continue that mission. The other thing I want to share with you is that there are concerns, of course, with government money going towards particular religious promotion. However, there are two very important Clinton administration era and Bush 1 administration era directives. What was the presidential edict? What are they?
Executive orders.
Executive orders that specifically prohibit us considering that they're a religious organization in deciding to give them money. We have to be blind to the fact that they are. We cannot parse federal funds based on whether they're a religious organization or not. That would be illegal. So it is something to keep in mind. And I would say that before anybody thinks about what that division is, that they have a long talk with our attorney to figure out where a rule might be set, what they can and can't do with the funds when it comes to religious activity.
Okay,
Makes sense. Yes.
so we'll start with the visits. Very good. Any other questions on Food Bank Support Fund? Let's move on to 3.6, pocket parks, trees, and open space. $1 million for this?
Yeah, so I'm gonna propose that we create, I'm gonna propose that the committee think about a subcommittee to do outreach for this.
Where does the tree warden fall in all this?
Well, the tree warden has one 10,000 of that million
Right.
reserved for him by the council already. And he has other projects coming up that he could use matching funds for of 30, 40,000 come December. So he'll apply for grants that he'll need 100% match for. And so he'll need some funds then. The problem for this committee and the problem for the administration is that this could be 30, 40 projects. It's a swing set here, it's a clearing of brush there. There are lots of little pocket parks all over the city, and we don't have the staff time, we don't have the commitment to go out and beat the bushes and look for all of these. So we do need someone or a group of folks here that will help get the word out that we're looking for suggestions from the community. So once we get somebody that says, yes, there's a city-owned playground down the street, it's all overgrown, it's wood full of splinters, can we refresh the playground for the kids? Well, yes, we can, but if there's no neighborhood group to champion it and manage it, that means that somebody here has to do it, and nobody works here, we don't have any staff.
Do we have a
So-
list of all the pocket parks?
Yes, we have 18 pocket parks.
Are we focusing on those parks? We also have some larger parks, right?
Well, the intention was to give time and attention and money to the parks that don't get any time, attention, and money.
Okay.
So Painter Park gets time, attention, and money. The Boardwalk gets time, attention, and money, but the little swing sets up in Allentown don't. I think the council would be a good place to find project lists from.
So, how soon can you get me a list of the parks?
Ernie has the list. So we can get it to you
What
tomorrow.
about Ernie suggested that he could help manage this, but he would need more hours to do that?
Well, that's part of a broader discussion, but yes, we think that there are a number of things going on. So I'll just start from the top. We have a gentleman, Ernie Chiarelli. He's an employee. We pay him a stipend of $5,000 a year to manage sidewalk repairs. He works 20 to 25 hours every week, mostly as a volunteer, and he manages all these little projects that Park and Rec can't get to and what the commissioner can't get to. It's a little much to ask him, in addition to all he does, to take on all of these park projects. It's more than he can do.
Do we have the ability to pay someone? All right,
So we-
that's the answer.
I knew where you were going with that right away, yes.
So we can bring him up to 17 and a half hours a week at a pay scale that would cost us about, I believe it was 40,000 for the year to bring him up to the maximum. I think it was 17.5 is what the legal said that we could hire him for. We also have a suggestion that's been floating around our minds that we would hire him an assistant. So that between the two, we would have the equivalent of a full-time project manager. And there's another reason why we want to do that, and this is something that we haven't discussed too far, but the water company is tearing up about a third of the city to replace old water lines that go from the mains into the homes. Every single one of those excavations is going to require a permit from the sidewalk inspector. So we're thinking that other inspector would also help cover all these inspections that Ernie's going to have to do over the next 2 years for this several thousand sidewalk excavations.
And that cost would be coverable as well.
Yeah, because it's clean water.
So we have a relationship with Ernie, he's already working here. In that case, we're increasing his hours. But the second person is being named as an assistant. What ARPA rules govern that? I mean, can you just hire?
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be a city employee, they would just need to document in their time where they're spending their time.
For reimbursement.
Right, because, I think the argument could be made that cost of the, additional assistant, I mean, we could charge it either to the water project or to a community's, the same place where the green space is gonna be charged, because that's really what they're doing, but that's just geography. The bottom line is it's allowable, and we can find the appropriate expenditure category for the reporting.
Would it be appropriate to put it under the administration costs?
Yeah, I mean, that administrative one, like the same bucket that we're getting paid out of, that's,
Yeah.
More global to administering the funds rather than some of the specific
These guys don't want any partners in there.
tasks that are done. No, I don't care one way or the
No,
other.
it should
If
come out of
you've
the.
If you've got funds that have been appropriated that are project-specific, then it's appropriate to use a part of that for people who are specifically working to make
Absolutely.
that happen.
I agree,
Yeah.
I agree.
So let's just get a feel for what they gotta do. If we have on Fresh Meadow Road, a council person had just acquired a piece of parcel, I guess it was a 99-year lease, to put a little playground in for that particular neighborhood. So someone has to go in and clear the brush, someone has to pick playground equipment, someone has to go to finance and get the playground equipment bid. Then they have to get the foundation for the playground equipment, organize the delivery, get the material delivered, landscape it, coordinate with the landscaper, take before and after pictures, keep a spreadsheet. That's just one little park. So we got 18 of these projects. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of running around to do. That's why we think we need somebody who's dedicated, just making sure that something doesn't slip through the cracks. A little management money up front would be much better than a mistake or an oversight.
I mean, we have a guy in the Economic Development Committee, Hunter, you know about him?
Yeah.
Is that someone we could?
Well, I'm sure we could offer it to him, but it doesn't sound like the type of thing that he'd. you'd want to do, but I think that the commissioner probably has a few people in mind that would be qualified as sidewalk inspectors.
All right. All right, so we should move on that then. Jack, is it appropriate to call for a vote to fund Ernie's 17 and a half hours a week now, or?
That's up to you.
Yeah.
That's totally up to you. I mean, it's an allowable cost, so you can do with it as you.
And we
as
do
you see
another,
fit.
another 17 and a half with the assistant, correct?
So there's 17 and a half hours, yeah.
All right, so I need a motion to fund Ernie Chirelli to 17 and a half hours a week to work on specifically the Pocket Park projects and to fund the hiring of an assistant to do the same.
So he already works 5,
I'm
so,
going 17 and a half above that.
no, 17 and a half total.
Total. So 12 and a half, okay.
Yeah,
So 12 and a half for Ernie and 17 and a half for.
17 and a half for an assistant sidewalk inspector.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Motion to fund Ernie 17.5 per week and an assistant.
12.5.
12.5 for.
17.5
Yeah.
for the system.
Okay,
So the motion is 12 and a half hours additional for Ernie, 17 and a half hours for an assistant to be determined.
okay.
Specifically for 3.6 Pocket Parks, Trees and Open Space
Right.
project.
It's just,
Oh,
you
no,
know,
wait, we're in the middle of the motion. All right, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All right, now discussion. Any discussion from anybody? You got a question, Doug? Go ahead.
so just to be clear, we should be naming it by title, not by name, so it's the sidewalk inspector is authorized up to.
That's fine, we'll change
X,
that, yeah.
And the to-be-hired assistant sidewalk inspector.
So just clean that motion up. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to the Johnson Senior Center. We actually had a nice meeting down there. And we toured what would be like the first floor of the Johnson, the Noble Community Center. We want to move the seniors from the top floor down a floor. In order for that to happen, we have to refurbish the elevator. We have to paint everything, put in some new flooring, put in some new cabinets. Not a lot of heavy work. We met with the architect. He's on board. That was the one that we voted on to do the job. And he's sending us over a estimate of how many hours his firm's gonna spend, not to exceed, based on his hourly wage that he submitted in the bid proposal. So I think that's going well. I also contacted Titan Energy. They think there's a huge opportunity in the community center to change every single light to LED. And that's the firm I've been using for the schools. And the way that works is it's a 40% grant from the UI. The other 60% is of the cost to change every light is spread over 48 months. And that fee, which is interest-free, is less than the savings that they guarantee you receive by changing the lights. So that's not ARPA money, that's gonna be a separate transaction.
Force multiplier.
Okay. So we feel good about that one, and we'll keep you updated on that one. Any questions on 6.1, anyone? Moving down to, again, 6.1 here, DPW infrastructure paving and improvements. So,
Sorry, Ken, did you skip child development?
I guess I did. Child developments, yeah, they're all 6.1, I'm sorry. So Child Development Center roof, we have Antonazzi doing the roof design now. We've already done the asbestos testing, you saw those bills already last month. And as soon as those specs come in, we're gonna put it out to bid and get that portion of the roof replaced under ARPA funds. Okay? And has that hit we're waiting for design, so it hasn't hit the street yet, okay? And then we move on to the other part of 6.1, which is the paving. So we already committed $2 million based on the council's request for paving work. And I believe the council added another 1.5, is that correct?
Not by vote.
Okay,
It's in debate.
okay. All right, so right now with the 2 million, okay. Moving on to 5.6, stormwater management. Let me pull that one out here. So we're looking at roughly $1 million, and I'd like to get this thing moving. Where do we stand on an engineer coming in and evaluating what needs to be done?
So, the first thing you've done is you've approved 560 out of that 3 million for the, vac truck. And that is currently being bid, and there are no,
Not 3 million.
yeah, it's 3 million total for stormwater.
Oh, because Vectric's above that. Yeah, I'm looking at the
Yeah.
1.4. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's broken down in a couple of categories. So the plan for this money is to use it to seed other money, to be able to go after things that we normally can't even look at in projects and structures. As a grant writer, I can't apply for anything without a plan, and people love to use this term shovel ready. So the first thing we need to do is to hire an engineer who can canvass the city, come up with cost estimates to take care of our worst stormwater issues, and give us a report that we can use as justification to apply for grant money. We would then be reserving part of this over the next 2 years to actually fund a lot of those local contributions, have to be part of the grant applications.
So we know we're there with that information. My question is, moving forward, we can pull an engineer off the squad list, you think, or do you want to go out to bid? And I also heard that there was an engineer who already was knee-deep in this study with previous grant money.
So I don't want to speak for the purchasing department, but when we get into money this big, they prefer to bid it.
Okay.
And it would mean for us another month, I think we could take a breath and just bid it.
All right, let's do that then.
If it's, a $50,000-$60,000 design fee, then we can go off the list.
All right, do we have any on-the-shelf bids, RFPs or RFQs for this?
Yes.
Sorry,
So
RFQ?
So we can get the RFQ out for a stormwater survey very quickly. Now, second piece of that is that this money is intended to move us towards a stormwater authority. Now, a stormwater authority works very similar to a sewer authority, where people pay a user fee instead of a tax. There's a lot of reasons we want to do this, but the council has not raised 13 hands and said, go do it. So they haven't been asked we haven't asked them that question yet. We need a lot more work done up front.
All right, but let's start with.
So Circa,
Yep.
Circa has a grant out there for us to do that study to bring back. So some of the money for this is going to be held aside to supplement that Circa study.
All right, but we also have available funds to address immediate issues that we know.
Yes.
Okay, so I've got information coming in Allentown. I actually visited a couple sites where we have some drainage trenches that need to be cleaned out.
Right. So the city has, over the last couple of years, has relied heavily on a certain contractor who unfortunately is ill at the current moment. And we've been waiting for him to come back online to start giving us some price estimates.
How long
on
has he
the
been waiting?
work. He's been out a couple of months. Hopefully, we'll see him back to work shortly.
But it doesn't sound like he is he bidding this every year and getting a contract, or is he just kind of here and we're using him?
I don't know what they, so he's an on-call contractor for the sewer authority.
Is there a bid is there a bid behind it that we can?
Not that we could piggyback on, no,
Okay.
we would have to do a new,
All right, so
new on-call.
we need a new bid. All right,
Yeah.
so what I want to do is I want to put a bid out for an on-call sewer guy, vendor, that can address these areas. I mean,
These small projects.
yes, some of these things are affecting whole neighborhoods, and it's like $6,000 of work.
Yes.
All right, any questions on 5.6, anybody?
So what you'd be asking for is an on-call RFQ for a
RFP, just go
stormwater.
RFP, don't do
With an
RFQ.
RFP?
Yep. I'll use the RFQ for the engineer, but not the
Right,
vendor.
okay, for, an on-call stormwater contractor.
Correct. And that's, yeah. And there's nothing says we can't pick two guys.
Correct.
All right, moving on. Any questions on 5.6 from the committee? Moving on, 6.1, recycling and reuse center on Helm Street. So we talked about that a little bit already.
Yeah.
We've chosen Antonazzi as an architect if needed. In the meantime, the city is putting it out to bid for an engineer.
The, just as a full explanation to the committee, the engineering department and the commissioner felt strongly that the particular goal here was of a particular expertise. There's a subset of civil engineers who actually do this kind of work. Because of the timing involved in the funding and being able to get through the process at the state for permitting, you really need someone who's not learning on the job. So I think that was the impetus behind that. And hopefully by the 12th, we'll have a selection for you to make.
All right, let's try to stick to that. Any questions on 6.1? Anybody? Let's move on to 3.9, child pedestrian safety. So Ernie is absolutely moving quickly on the replacement of these sidewalks. Washington's section, Washington School's already completed. Ernie's got pictures. He's moving ahead. He thinks we'll be done with the whole $409,000 this summer. He has an illness in the family, and he's not here tonight, but he's doing a great job for us, a really great job. And that's going very well. So next month I'll have some pictures for you. Any questions on 3.9?
Are those pictures gonna be available on the website as well? So
Absolutely,
people can see
yeah.
it?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea as just an overall policy, is to, for any of these where there's sort of, it lends itself to before and after pictures, or other sorts of measurements like that where you can demonstrate how much better off the community is for how well this money has been spent. I think that's imperative to put on the website. You want to, I've phrased it at other communities, you want to tell your story. You want to tell your story about how well you're using these funds. And I think before and after visuals are very powerful ways to be able to do that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's the policy, or has been the policy, will continue to be the policy. All right, moving on to 5.17. Had a chance to meet with the library, and it turns out they have a program called the Navigator Program, and they follow a state program that most libraries actually follow. And the way it works is they identify families that cannot afford internet or computers. And as it turns out, in the city of West Haven, 1 in 4 do not have internet in their homes. They bring these individuals in for 3 classes, at which point they receive a laptop and a Wi-Fi device. After the 3 classes are complete, they take the Wi-Fi and laptop, they bring it home. The Navigator program pays $40 a month to the Wi-Fi company, so the family has Wi-Fi for a year. At the end of the year, the family keeps the 2 devices. With the $100,000, based on the staff they have to hire to teach the classes, the laptops they have to buy, and the Wi-Fi boxes they have to buy, and the monthly fee for the Wi-Fi boxes, they could service 88 families. So she is beginning that program now. I told her we're gonna treat it as a reimbursement as she gets the invoices, bring them to us, and we'll reimburse them. We have $100,000 in for that. Okay. Any questions on that one?
Who's the she?
Colleen Bailey, Director of the Wesleyan Library. Yes, sir.
How do they select what family get the use of the?
I don't have details on that for you, but I gotta tell you, if anybody knows in this entire city who is the most needy family, it's the West Haven Library. They have a good program, for identifying who needs these services. Those, once they're identified, they're put into a class, which there's further vetting going on. I felt I didn't get all the details in that, but I felt very comfortable. They knew how to identify those families.
And yeah, to your point, from a compliance standpoint, they'll need to establish some criteria that they're going to evaluate
Okay.
those families, and we'd be happy to meet with the folks at the library just to share some of the things that we're seeing at other localities, not necessarily for this program, but for similar programs, some of the eligibility criteria that other localities are using, to make it as administratively painless as it can to administer the program. But they've got to have some criteria out there.
They're moving on that now. If you could give me something in writing, I'd like to
Yeah,
share that
well,
with
it's
their-
gonna be a meeting. Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna need to talk to them and find out where their head's at.
You have a question?
No.
Okay. All right, any other questions on 5.17? All right, 6.1 are the new windows in City Hall. I know Doug met with Hoffman.
Hoffman sent a representative. We toured the window, took pictures. I even got a great cut from a falling window, just to prove a little blood in the game.
Did you take a picture of the blood I could send to the council?
So that is moving forward. It's funny, you know, Ken was chiding me for picking a junk window, but I had asked other window companies to bid on this just to give me some comfort in budgeting. And out of the 5 companies we asked, only one responded. 4 months later, I sent it to him last week. He says, no, you don't want those.
You know, I think what's gonna happen, Doug, is we're going to put a wood frame on the inside of the block, do a new construction window with a flange, wrap the outside with AZAC, and do a stop on the inside. I think that's where it's gotta go, because you can't get a vinyl window in this block, so we'll talk about it. When are they getting back to you, or what's their next?
So they're starting work. So they
And who's our contact over there?
not off the top of my head, but her card's on my desk.
Okay.
And I'll get that to you. But
Yeah.
I sent her building plans, and she's sketching it out, working into her schedule.
I definitely wanna talk to her sooner than later. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any questions on 6.1? Windows? Moving on to 7.3, aid to fire districts. So the 3 fire departments each received roughly $1,040,000. They wanna use that for ventilation and increasing their footprint within their firehouses, so the sleeping quarters are not so cramped. And they have a unique issue, is that we with the home rule and everything, they don't have many women firewomen, so they're bringing them on now, and they need separate sleeping quarters. My first question is, the ARPA committee put out a bid to 4 architects, which we've accepted. I mean, with many architects, we've narrowed it down to 4. Could we just give them one of the architects off the list of 4, or do they have to?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you've pre-selected
That's what I'm thinking.
those, yeah, I mean, they're all eligible, so once they're in, you can direct it as you see fit.
And David, I think for your role, you should work with these fire districts. They're not out hiring another attorney, spending more funds.
Sure.
We'd like to, get you involved in that.
Yeah, well, we can handle that.
Just to add to that, the tag of 25,000, it was $1,025,000, I think, that we had asked for.
Yeah.
That 25 was to put in immediate
Right.
filtration systems. And I've talked to the chiefs about making that a collective purchase, so they're not out getting their own
That's good.
on their, so we're gonna work together with them to start that off.
Excellent.
We may also want to consider just changing the title of that project just a little bit. Aid to fire districts could be misconstrued as sort of a general aid. This is, capital projects assistance or something like that, so that we make it clearer, because there are some prohibitions on just general aid like that to
The word
other
aid, the word aid's
governmental
a bad
entities.
word, yeah.
Yeah, so aid is a word that I would try to minimize if possible.
So capital project expense or something,
Yeah, capital projects,
firehouses?
yeah, for fire districts.
I imagine we're gonna need a contract, because these are separate government entities. We don't want this to be sub-grants, because that creates another.
As you know, we can handle contracts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Because if we make them a sub-entity, another government entity and a sub-grant, that's a whole nother can of reporting worms for all of
Correct.
us. We'd rather them just be the end user, as I understand it, right?
I think that that's the way. We'd have to talk a little bit more about how physically the funds would flow so that the contracting is set up that way, but we can add that to the ever-growing list of things we're gonna catch up on here in the short
Good.
term.
Can we do a Zoom call this, not this week, next week?
Sure.
With the fire districts?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great idea.
All right, let's move on. Any questions on 7.3? Anybody? Let's move on to 6.1, which is traffic cameras. A lot of back and forth on this. I met the IT at the police department, I think his name is Matt, and Sergeant Thompson, great guys. Met them down at the beach, and what we came up with the engineering firm that we had with us as an advisor engineering firm is putting in a DVR in the pool house, the bathhouse. They have a separate office in there that's secure. Running fiber from the bathhouse in both directions along the water. And it turns out that, every so many yards, there's a call station where you actually hit a button in 911. Some of them are broken, some of them work. Taking those call stations, replacing them with a new call station, and doing a large pole that would house 5 or 6 cameras per pole. And connecting each pole with fiber optic cable. And that gives us cameras along the beach that is recording activity accessible by the police from West Walk all the way down to the Sandy Hook place gate past the conference center. If fiber optics becomes available versus the internet, there's one device they have to buy, very inexpensive, and they switch it over to fiber optic and they're still in business. So we felt good about that, and we're presently working on an RFP for an engineer, an RFQ, I should say, for an engineer to design that. Once we pick an engineer who specializes in this type of work, we'll then put it out to bid to a contractor. So I feel good about that, and so do the cops. And we have about $1 million to spend. That project I just described is not gonna cost $1 million, but once we successfully implement that in what is the neediest area for cameras, we will then go to other parts of the city and do it again. All right? Any questions on 6.1? Next, we move on to 3.16, police personnel retention funding. That's something we already talked about. You need some documentation, so we should get you in front of finance at some point.
Yep.
And do that. 3.9, Children's Camp Grant Summer Employment Fund. So this one sort of morphed into the employment fund last minute. We discovered that by the time it was approved, the camps are already booked, payments were made. So with that, we took the kids and offered them summer jobs, part-time jobs to help at the schools, help at parks, things like that. And my understanding is they've already committed about 30,000 of the 100,000 to those kids. So you might want to let me know what reporting you need on that.
Yep.
And maybe a separate letter or something that I
Yep.
could share with the Board of Ed. Any questions on 3.9? 7.1, CARES Act Financial Management. That's the money, the bucket of money we have for paying our paid professionals. Any questions on that? And by the way, the register had it wrong. They said 800,000 just for UHY. We tried to straighten that out, so I think we're good there. And finally, I've got Painter Park Fieldhouse. We gotta pick an architect for that, I guess.
Yeah,
You wanna talk about that one next month?
So just a synopsis, just to bring everybody up to speed. The Director of Parks and Recreation has a site in mind, and we need some boring tests to see whether that's an appropriate site to build a building. So there's some exploratory money that needs to be spent there. Then we need to think about a building design that can be added onto as additional funds are obtained over the years, because this is not enough money to build what they want. So the idea is we're gonna build the base building, we'll give them something, and they'll have a design on the table for us to apply for future grants, future funds to make it bigger and do what they wanna do. That's our plan. So I guess the first thing is we need an architect and an engineering team to go in and start the boring tests and.
So we gotta pick an architect for this. All right, let's work on that one next month.
Okay.
Okay, Ernie's not here tonight, so we're gonna skip over that. Is there any proposed new business from anyone on the committee? All right, any other questions from anybody? What was that? Oh, what you got?
So one of the parks that came up frequently in Peter's neighborhood is a park called Marginal Drive. And it runs from, Peter, it runs from Route 1 all the way over to Derby Avenue. And this is a park that actually belongs to the city of New Haven. It's in our legal boundaries, but they physically own the fee title to the land and the road, it turns out. There's an affinity group who would like to make that a real park. And we've come up with plans back to the board administration to work in partnership with the city of New Haven to operate this park and open the trail up. So they want to make a presentation under our $1 Million Park Fund to put in cameras and call boxes and clean up some trash and put in a parking lot, etc. But we did a deed search just to see whether we own that road as a city road, and we don't. It belongs to the city of New Haven. So I think that just food for thought, that we need to consider whether this is something we should encourage them to apply for or not. We don't really own it. It's not a city park. And maybe it's something we kick back to the administration and say, do you want to go to New Haven and pick up this 1980s plan to partner with them on this park? And it's something for the committee to consider whether it's appropriate use of West Haven ARPA funds for parks to spend on a park that we don't
You don't
own.
have enough ARPA funds to do that, for that $1 million, that's the problem.
Yeah. So it is coming. If you hear about it, that's what it's about. So where we're at now is we just did the deed search. We're sure we don't own it. I'm sure we don't own the road. But we still have a group of West Haven residents who are very interested in promoting that park. So at some point, there might be something we can do to help them, but it'll be something for everyone here to consider.
I have a question. Would this park be benefiting West Haven residents, or would it be benefiting New Haven residents?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually envision a bike trail from West Haven all the way to Southern Connecticut State College.
Okay.
And this would be part of that link.
So it could be a joint effort between West Haven and New Haven?
Yeah. The question though is, does that joint effort start here, or does it start with the mayor? Does it start with the council? At what point do you feel that you could spend the money on that park?
Yeah,
So it's
18
something to
pocket
discuss.
parks is
A lot of work.
roughly 50,000 per park in the $1 million budget. There's no money for that.
Yeah.
Minus the administrative that we approved already.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's gonna come up in discussion, so I just thought it would be worth it to share with you.
All right, any other new business, anyone? All right, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Guys, have a great night. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great night. Thank you very much.